As your model becomes more complex, it can become difficult to edit certain items. Sometimes there's an item in the way of another item and you need to see behind it. Or sometimes you just find an item in a view that shouldn't really be there. In the last two movies, we talked about different levels of the hierarchy of visibility settings. So we started with object styles and we said that these were global changes, and then we saw that to turn things on and off, we could use visibility graphics on a view-by-view basis. Well, sometimes, you don't want all the furniture to hide. You just want that one piece of furniture to hide or something along those lines. Well, it turns out that you can actually hide and edit elements right down to the element level. But I just want to caution you, always try and do it globally first, if that makes sense, and then work your way down to individual edits. There are two ways that we can actually do such editing. We have our temporary variety and we have our permanent variety. So on screen right now, I have a file called Hide Isolate, and I'm looking at a 3D view, and you can see that I have my link to Revit file, site file here. This was linked in back in chapter 5. And perhaps I want to do some work on the foundation walls of this file, and I want to work in 3D, but of course the site file is concealing my view of those foundation walls. So this is a good example of where we could use temporary hide to temporarily take the site file and just get it out of our way. So all we have to do is select it, and then if you look down on the view control bar, which is this little temporary hide isolate icon, it kind of looks like little sunglasses, and we're going to go ahead and click on that. Now we have hide element, we have hide category, and we also have isolate category and isolate element. So each of these works a little differently. If you do hide element, that's what we want in this case. It will just hide whatever you have selected, and this will work on one object or several objects, so however many you have selected. And again, in the scenario that I just discussed, I could now zoom in and get a better look at the foundation walls and the footings and so forth without the topography in the way. When I'm done making whatever edit I need to make to those items, I could go back to the sunglasses and I can choose the reset temporary hide isolate mode. Now, the alternative approach there was to select, and I could do isolate element. That's actually the exact opposite. So instead of hiding what you have selected, it hides everything else in the model. And again, that's also temporary. What do we mean by that? Well, if you look at the outline of my screen, you'll notice that I have this cyan colored border all the way around my screen. That's Revit's way of letting you know that you're in this temporary hide isolate mode. That mode stays active only during the current work session. So if I were to close Revit and go home for the day and reload the project tomorrow, nothing would be hidden or isolated any longer. If I were to print this file, it would still print everything as if it weren't hidden or isolated. So it's a temporary on-screen viewing mode just meant to make your job a little bit easier while you're working. And of course, you can always reset it at any time. One other example of using temporary hide and isolate is it also works categorically. So if I select a single element and I say hide category, then in this view, it will temporarily hide all columns. Okay, and again, isolate category would do the same thing, except it would hide everything but columns. So those modes all work view by view. So if I have something selected and hidden in this 3D view, and I go to my level 1 floor plan, it is not selected and hidden in that 2D floor plan view. It was only in the 3D view where I did the hiding. So that's temporary hide. There's also another form of hiding called permanent hide. And the way this works is when you select the item and you say, I want to hide it, it hides it permanently until you choose to go and unhide it. So it would print that way, and it would still be hidden tomorrow when you open the file. So for example, while I was working on the curtain wall, I went in and cut this section here along the front of the building just to make it a little easier to see what I was working on. And if I double click it, you can see, very simple, just looking right at the curtain wall. I may not want that section bubble to actually show in this view because I don't really intend to put that section on a sheet by itself or anything. I was just using that as a working view to make it easier to work on the curtain wall. So I can select that section item, and then up here on the toolbar, I'm going to go to hide elements. In the Visibility Graphics movie, we looked at hide category. That would hide all section markers in this view. That's not what I want. I want to do hide elements, which will hide only the one that I have selected. Let's look at another quick example. If I go to the foundation plan, we have a little bit of work to do in here. Some we'll do in this movie, some we'll do in a future movie. But you'll notice here that there's this sort of floating dashed line thing. What is that? Well, if I pause over it, it's actually an opening in a wall on the level above. This guy right here. And just because of the way that family is designed, it's interacting with the foundation plan and it thinks it needs to show it here. Now you could go through a lot of effort to try and figure out why it's displaying and edit the family and do a variety of things to try and make it not display. But it might be easier to just say, you know what, it doesn't need to be in this view. I'm just going to select it and go to hide elements, and that takes care of the problem. Now in both cases, you've hidden something and it's a permanent hide. So it's gone. How would you get it back? What if you changed your mind? If I go back to level 1 floor plan and say, you know, I really want to get that section back in here. I want to see that now because I'm actually going to put it on the sheet after all. How do I get it back? Well, down here in the view control bar, there's a little light bulb icon and it's called Reveal Hidden Elements. So I'm going to click on that. And instead of the cyan colored border that we saw before, we'll now get this sort of maroon colored border going around the screen. It will indicate to us that we're in reveal mode. It grays out the model, and then anything that's hidden in view will display also in this sort of reddish maroon color. And you can see, if I zoom out just a touch, that the site plan was already hidden in this view when we started. And when I zoom back in, this section that we just hid a moment ago ourselves is hidden. And I can select it, and then up here on the ribbon, I can choose Unhide Element, and that will bring it back. And then I can click either here to close the mode or back on the light bulb to close the mode, either one, and it will get me out of that mode and the section is now displayed again. So use temporary hide and isolate when you just want to get something out of your way while you're working because it's kind of in the way and you just need to see clearer, and it will come back again the next time you open the file or when you reset the temporary hide. You use permanent hide when you don't want it to display, you don't want it to print, you want it off the view permanently. Both of these changes are view by view, so they only affect the view you're in. Both have utility, and then if you need to get things back that you've permanently hidden, you can use the reveal mode, the little light bulb, to get things back.